Hello and welcome to the 19th Annual Green Living Festival, coming to you virtually through the magic of electrons and through the generous support of our presenting sponsor, Ameren, Missouri. Green Living Festival is an offering of the Earthways Center at Missouri Botanical Garden. I'm Jean Ponzi, Green Resources Manager on the Earthways team. And this team, year-round, in so many ways, promotes and educates about and explores and evaluates sustainable solutions for you that we think are workable and useful and money-saving and health-producing in everyday life, where we live, where we learn, where we work, where we play, where we worship. Green Living Festival, 3 days this year. Green Living Day, June 6th, Energy Day, June 9th, Naturescaping Day, June 11th, some live events on each day, and all of the resources of this virtual event available for your convenient viewing and easy learning at mobot.org/greenlivingfest. Check them out. This exhibitor interview features my pleasure to get to talk to my colleague in the green world, Rachel Greathouse. She is sustainability coordinator for our local commercial composting company, St. Louis Composting, and its sister company, Total Organics Recycling.
Okay.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's kind of like rot and roll out there at St. Louis Composting every day, huh?
Yes, it sure is. It's really fun.
And I'm so pleased that you are there on the job and that sustainability coordinator is a part of the team, in addition to the soil specialists and the processing specialists and, the marketing and the business folks at St. Louis Composting. What is so sustainable about composting at this scale?
Yeah, so what's so sustainable about composting at the large scale that we have? So Total Organics Recycling is the hauler portion of our composting business. So we haul for large scale restaurants and businesses, anywhere from Schnucks, the St. Louis Cardinals, to school districts.
And the Missouri Botanical Garden.
And the Missouri Botanical Garden, you're exactly right. And so it's really fun that we get to work with all these big partners, to reduce their waste in such a dramatic and heavy tipping scale, right? And then St. Louis Composting is the arm or the wing that actually makes the compost and, processes the material and breaks it down over a time period and produces that material to sell it.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're going to show us a few images of that. So I see behind you there, since 1992, what prompted setting up a business like St. Louis Composting?
So Patrick, the president and founder, really saw a niche market for setting up composting services. Back in 1992, there was a law passed here in Missouri that said that yard waste was banned from going to the landfills. Mm-hmm. And so Patrick was a landscaper at the time, and he said, there's not really a market for disposing of the landfill or the yard waste material. And so he found this kind of unique market situation, and he started that business, based out of that law.
Mm-hmm. And today, compost is an ingredient in organic gardens. It's part of rainscaping. It's a really important way to manage food waste if that food cannot already be diverted to people who need it. Rachel Greathouse, I have to give you a shout out right here. You convened a little task force to address food waste issues, and we'll be talking on Saturday, June 6th, in a live panel about food wasting with some of our colleagues.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And we're getting really good momentum. And we've got a lot of great partners at the table addressing this from all sides, not just composting side, but also addressing hungry people and hungry animals, which is really exciting to me.
Good work, Rachel Greathouse. Okay, let's pause here for a moment and then get your slides up. So, Rachel, commercial food scrap composting, yard waste is a part of this, but food waste, wasn't that a separate permitting process, a separately regulated component of large-scale composting?
Yeah, it is. It is separate. Not all of our sites are permitted to take food waste, food scraps. All of our sites are able to take yard waste, yard trimmings, leaves and grass, branches. Um, so all of our sites can handle that. But as far as food waste, yeah, it is a separate permit that has to be regulated in a different way. And we've got only a handful of our sites that accept food waste, and not residential food waste, commercial food waste.
Mm-hmm. I know you've done at least one pilot project, maybe with one neighborhood or one subdivision, about residential compost collection. There's a lot of interest in composting about food waste. I'll ask you when we go back into the two of us on the slide. Remind me to do that, Rachel. What's the difference between what people can do at home in composting and what you are doing? But go on to your next, the why and the what of compost.
Yeah, so I always like to start this out because I don't know where everyone kind of their understanding of compost, but just to give a basic definition and why we compost. So the what of compost is just simply breaking down material. So you've got your leaves and your branches, grass clippings, and in some cases food material that breaks down over time. And this is broken down with heat and moisture, time, of course. And over this period of time, it becomes this loose, nutrient-rich compost that you can amend to your soils. The great thing about compost is that it helps with water retention. So this is part of the why. Why do we want to add it to our garden? Well, as drought seasons come, and especially here in St. Louis, we can get in periods of seasons of drought. So compost holds up to 6 times its water weight. And so, it can really make sure that the garden stays well watered, even though in those periods of drought. It's also, some places are able to capture gas from it, the methane gas, and use it as energy. But even if not capturing the methane gas, it's definitely keeping the food waste and the yard waste, which are one of the biggest contributors to methane gas in landfills. It's keeping that material out of the landfill and putting it somewhere useful. Because once it's in the landfill, it sits there forever and there's no other alternative for it or use for it. By separating it out, much like people do recycling, we're able to use it as a beneficial resource.
And one of the great things about composting as at the commercial scale, as a part of our whole waste minimization infrastructure, is these are local jobs. This is a local enterprise. We're sending material maybe from the city of St. Louis as far as someplace like Valley Park, as opposed to sending it halfway around the planet.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, these jobs are very hyper local, which is incredible. Even with recycling, you're able to send out a couple 100 miles. But yeah, compost has to stay very local. We're not sending our compost even to Chicago, very much within a 100-mile radius, which is incredible to see that sort of job market and potential here. And I think St. Louis is ripe for this model.
Right. So Total Organics, the hauling part of the whole enterprise, those are short hops. That's not long haul hauling and delivery.
Right. Exactly. You're exactly right. Very short deliveries.
Can you show us, Rachel, a little bit of what composting looks like on one of your sites?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this is kind of just a bird's eye view of what happens. So we have these yellow totes. We've got 2 sizes, 64 gallons and 21 gallons. This is the 64 gallon that's seen in the picture. This is at a local grocery store, but specifically in the produce department, we're able to take everything from the produce, everything from the floral, prepared foods. The great thing about being commercial is a lot of people have questions. Do I need to sort out my produce from my, prepared foods or other things. No, it all gets to be able to put into one bin together. So after it has been filled up, our trucks come by, and this is actually a picture of one of our trucks, the back half of it. And it's much similar to, you know, your trash or your recycling truck, where they're able to empty it into the truck directly. After they've made their collection routes for the day, they go to one of our 2 facilities that accept the food scraps, and they're able to dump out of there. Now you see this picture, there's food waste does not typically look this pretty. You might be wondering, you know, I can clearly see whole edible fruits and vegetables, you know, and this is probably coming from one of our larger grocery store chains. You know, they do try to divert as much to people who are hungry and stuff like that, but we are working on that system as well, right? And then the next slide, the picture to the third over, is starting to build up our windrow piles. So windrows are essentially about 800 feet long by 14 to 16 feet wide and 6 to 8 feet high. So they're very, very long piles. And the food waste is kind of the material that's already broken down, the yard waste. You can kind of see it's black, and the food waste is going inside. We make this thing called kind of a taco, we call it. It's this big old U shape. We open it up and we put all the food waste in the middle, cover it up. And this really helps prevent pests from getting it too quickly, vectors, any sort of issues like that. So we really try to get this undercover as quickly as possible. And smells and everything like that too. So then the pile sits, because nature does its best in time. And about 4 to 6 months it takes to create compost. We do turn it once a month. So there's that last picture on the bottom right-hand side. This is called our Windrow Turner. And it kind of hovers over the pile, and it turns the pile and aerates it. Air is super important to making sure that compost breaks down efficiently, minimizes smell, produces heat. So it's really important that we get those piles turned every 3 to 4 weeks. That is how you get the finished product of compost. So this is kind of a sped up version and a bird's eye view of how our facility works.
Rachel, can I do my impression of a windrow turner for you?
Sure, yes, please do.
It's one of my favorite things. I always include that, except usually I'm moving along, leaning over, doing that when I'm giving a talk about how commercial composting works.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize how slow it moves. It's very, very slow moving machine, you know. Yeah. It's really fun to watch for sure.
Let's come out of the slides here and talk for a moment. It was fun to see that. That was just a little bit of a very quick trip, as you said, Rachel Greathouse, through the process of composting. How much material in what, a week, a month, a period of time does St. Louis Composting handle?
Yeah, well, right now it's a little lower. Obviously with COVID, we've had a lot of customers, put service on hold because restaurants stuff, serving food, but on average about 500 tons a week is what we pick up in the St. Louis region. So that's city, county, and a little bit on the Illinois side. But yeah, it makes up quite a bit of waste. That translates to 1 million pounds, 500 tons. So that's every week that we pick that up.
And I know the finished products that you sell, there's compost blends, there's stuff like bark mulch and other kind of soil amendments and soil tops and all that. How can people connect with St. Louis Composting to get those things, especially as more and more people are gardening right now?
Yeah, I know. It's been really exciting to see how many people are catching the gardening bug, which is really fun. So yeah, we have several locations throughout the city and county and even into Illinois. Our Valley Park location has the most offerings. We actually have a Missouri Botanical Black Gold compost.
Yep.
So we always like to give a shout out for that, which is really exciting. And it's a great soil amendment. We do have soil blends as well. Raised bed mix has been very popular during wanting to make sure they have their own food, their own fruits and veggies. So that's easy because you don't even have to sit there and blend everything together. You don't have to know a lot about soil. You can just put it right in and start planting right away, which is great. And of course, I always recommend getting mulch too, because you want to make sure that you're not allowing all that water to be evaporated. You want to cover your beds when you're growing so that water stays in. It also suppresses weeds. Mm-hmm. A lot of great mulches, I believe 10 or 12 different styles of mulch to suit whatever your preferences for your aesthetic preferences.
I know your Missouri Botanical Garden compost is bagged. I've driven out there in our pickup truck and just gotten a scoop loose in the truck and then shoveled it and wheelbarrowed, mulch or compost or whatever it was. So really quickly, Rachel, before we run out of time here, what are the big differences between the way in which St. Louis composting composts and the way in which we might compost in our yards, just so people are not confused about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely can do compost in your backyard. I do it in my backyard. I'm sure, Jean, you do it in your backyard.
I do.
Yeah, and I always recommend it. Give it a shot. It really helps you learn how we do stuff here, just on a larger scale. Mm-hmm. Differences, though, is that we can accept things like meat and dairy products and oil, whereas at your own home, that those products don't break down, and you don't want to put those in there because they could really draw in pests and rodents. So keeping those especially out of your backyard compost. But if you've got fruit and veggie scraps and yard trimmings, absolutely try to start a compost. The only disappointing thing I think about compost is you never get enough of it. You start off with a pile this big and it winds up to about a quarter of the size. So when you need that extra filler stuff, because you always seem to run out. I always seem to run out. But it's great. It's really fun to watch the process. But definitely if you do backyard composting, just keep those items out of your backyard compost bin.
And this is material for another more in-depth conversation. Really a shout out to St. Louis Composting for being a part of the Compost Manufacturers Association nationally and working with manufacturers of compostable products to help better standardize those, labeling and testing and evaluation of all those. Our St. Louis Composting is really not only a local leader, but a national leader in organics management. Yay.
Yay, we're really excited to be a part of that too.
Rachel Greathouse, Sustainability Coordinator for St. Louis Composting. Thanks for talking to us. Thanks for being a friend of our Green Living Festival and bringing your resources to us. We always love to talk rot and roll.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. And we'll see you in the food waste panel for the Green Living Festival at noon on Saturday, June 6th, and then people can also watch that archive. We'll get much more into the subject of food waste and how to minimize it. Sustainable solutions you can use for green living, whoever you are, however you live, wherever you live, whatever your preferences and your processes and your means and your interest in doing green stuff is. We realize that this is not top of mind for everybody all the time, but kind of like, plants, they're everywhere. We try to incorporate and integrate and make useful the resources that come from the Earthway Center at Missouri Botanical Garden. The Green Living Festival is presented by Ameren, Missouri. We so appreciate that presenting sponsorship and the energy it provides to bring these resources to you, all of which are available online at your convenience, mobot.org/greenlivingfest. From the Earthway Center team, I'm Jean Ponzi. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for living a little greener.